$369 billion toward climate change. That includes tens of billions in new investments in offshore wind and solar, doubling down on zero-emission vehicles, increasing energy efficiency, supporting clean manufacturing. Our Department of Energy estimates that this new law will reduce U.S. emissions by 1 gigaton a year by 2030.
Well, it is kind of a head-scratcher, isn't it? With everything going on in this country and around the globe right now, the president chooses to use the opportunity to speak before 193 sovereign nations to address climate change. That was really dominated the majority of his speech yesterday morning in New York City. He spent a lot of time talking about climate change as war rages in Ukraine and China threatens a possible invasion of Taiwan. On the very same day as the president's speech, the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, stated that nuclear weapons were on the table and that he was not bluffing. Joining us now for more, U.S. Deputy Military Rep to NATO and Newsmax military contributor General Blaine Holt with us. General, just want to get your reaction to the president's speech yesterday.
Good morning, Rob. It's good to be with you. It's such a theater of the absurd. It's this contrast of climate change is everything, yet on the world stage, you've got Russia, China, and India that by several orders of magnitude, hundreds of percent more CO2 emissions that would dwarf any of our pullbacks on how we live our lives, our gasoline, inflating our currency and whatnot. On the other side, geopolitics is a very serious business. And we now have a world leader for the second time this year threaten us with nuclear weapons as he gets increasingly backed into a corner. We saw 38 cities protest in Russia last night, 1,300 people facing 15 years prison sentences for that. So we're in a very interesting place.
Yeah, we've got video from that, General. I want to get to that in just a minute, but explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old, and then we can get back to Vladimir Putin. If India and China and those nations, basically, you go outside the 10, 12 biggest cities in China, and they are 100 years behind where we are. It's like the Industrial Revolution in China and certainly in India. My goodness, leave 5 miles out of Mumbai, the streets are dirt. They're dirt roads. They are building coal plants in all of these nations. In other words, if they don't cooperate with our climate agenda, our climate initiatives mean nothing, don't they?
That's exactly right. And so to make it very clear, we have these BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, in this status. They plan to compete against the West economically and even replace the dollar if they can get the petrodollar gone.
Right.
At the same, with no restraints whatsoever. And yet, on our side, we're so smart that we want to give up everything we have, our liberties, our way of life, all of these things to self-impose restrictions on us, wantonly spend billions and billions of U.S. taxpayer dollars to the world. We're not paying attention from a foreign policy standpoint that Europe is under grave threat by Russia,
right,
economically and in Ukraine.
Okay, so Vladimir Putin threatens the use of nuclear weapons, saber-rattling to some extent because he wanted to upstage Joe Biden speaking at the UN. How does this war end in Ukraine?
It could actually see an ending soon if you take a look at this potential script. The SCO happened. Vladimir Putin did not overwhelm his friends with his progress in Ukraine. India and China particularly put a lot of pressure on him. He has come back, looked at the map. He's going to do these referendums this week, these sham referendums. They will likely get affirmed by those SCO countries. And to kind of lock out the West, he's threatening the West. Hey, that's new Russian Federation territory. So I will look at all my weapons if this isn't what I can have as my war prize. That actually could be his off-ramp.
So there's the video right there. There were protests across Russia last night, anti-war protests, which means the war is not as popular as Vladimir Putin is trying to lead the rest of the world into believing. My question to you, General, what do you make of the complete lack of any call from Joe Biden yesterday to ask for peace talks between Zelensky and Putin and their deputies and whomever? No call whatsoever yesterday.
We talked about this a few days ago, and the same thing happened with Iran. Iran really threatened us, and we didn't say anything back to them at all. We missed a golden opportunity with that microphone. And you saw lots of world leaders after President Biden's speech come out heavily against Vladimir Putin's threats. And honestly, diplomacy is the way that we're going to have to urge this thing to its end, because Europe's got to go replace those gas stocks. We've already told them, because of our climate agenda, we're not giving you an extra pound of gas. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, big difference, by the way. Another reason to love America. Difference between America and Russia. You protest in America, you go home that night. You protest the war in Russia, you go to jail for how many years did you say, General? 15 years?
15. And there's a caveat now in America. Unless you're a Jan 6th protester, you get a different deal.
Oh, I forgot about that very, very important part of that story. You're exactly right. General Blaine Holt, we'll do it again soon. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right, we've got a...
No crooked establishment.
None of that
Twisting the truth.
No talking down to me.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think.
I trust Newsmax.
Newsmax.
They don't tell me how to think.
They
Let me decide.
Newsmax.
Real news
For real people.